When you install a YANMAR marine diesel, you need additional components to make sure that you have many hours of enjoyable time out on the water. Vetus can supply you with a full around the engine package. Think of items like waterlocks, dampers, mixers, goosenecks, but also the fuel system and the cooling system. Vetus has written a product guide for every YANMAR marine diesel. And the product guide not only shows you which waterlock to choose, which model, but also how large should the waterlock be. But we also include components such as fuel filters, stern gear systems, such as a water lubricated stern gear, but also the often overlooked details such as air vents. We will show you how to use the guide and how to help you select the correct components for your application. Before you start using the product guide, we strongly recommend to download the Vetus catalog as well. You can find it on vetus.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, and here you can find the download page for our catalog, which make it much easier to find the correct product for your application. To find the Vetus product guide for YANMAR engines, go to the yanmar.com marine website. Here you can select which engine you have, and I will show you where to find the product guide. So for instance, we're going to use the 1GM10 engine, view engine, and at downloads you can find the product guide, and this is the product guide that we will be using today. So press download and open the product guide. Once you have downloaded the product guide, the selection table, open it, and in the top row you can see all YANMAR engines listed. Find the engine that you have, and if you go down in the column, we will give you guidance for stern gear systems, propellers, flexible couplings, trainers, and so on. And in this video we will run you through all of those choices. When you ordered your YANMAR marine diesel engine, you can also specify which gearbox you want to use. There are different models of gearbox, and every model can have a different gearbox ratio. Before you enter the tables, please take note of which gearbox model you have and also which gearbox ratio that you are going to use. In the next row, we will offer you guidance for the correct propeller size for displacement boats. If you have a planing boat, please check with your local YANMAR representative or contact Vetus to check which propeller is fit for your application. When under sail, a fixed blade propeller will cost you a half to a full knot of boat speed because of the drag it creates. Our flex or fold line of folding propellers greatly reduces drag and will increase your boat speed. Flex or fold has solutions for sail drives and shaft driven boats. A flexible coupling is placed between the engine and the propeller shaft, or to be more precise, a flexible coupling is placed between the gearbox and the propeller shaft. A flexible coupling will greatly dampen any vibration in the drivetrain, and it will also absorb minor misalignment errors. At Vetus we supply different kinds of flexible couplings. Shown here is the bull flex. We also have the uniflex and the combi flex. Due to the special design of our flexible couplings, no additional tooling or machining is needed to fit them on a propeller shaft. Simply cut the propeller shaft to the desired length, deburr any sharp edges, degrease the propeller shaft so it's clean of any grease or other contaminants, and mount them inside the flexible coupling. You don't need an additional keyway to be ground in the propeller shaft or a conical section. Just cut to length, clean, deburr, and you're ready to install a flexible coupling. The bull flex coupling is the most versatile of our flexible couplings. For a given size it's the strongest one, so it can handle at a given size the most horsepower and engine torque, and it is fitted with a unique inner centering ring. If you want to, you can remove the centering ring, so if you have a very rigid installation, say a propeller shaft with 2 or 3 bearings, the propeller shaft itself is always exactly in position, you can remove the inner ring to dampen as much vibration as possible. In a more flexible installation, where the propeller shaft has a bit of room to move, say only an outer bearing and an inner gland, It makes sense to keep the centering ring in place because the centering ring will remove misalignments up to about 2 degrees. Of course, the less misalignment there is, the better, but the bull flex with a flexible propeller shaft and the centering ring in place will give you a very good alignment. The Uniflex coupling is basically a slightly older version of the bull flex. So in a new installation you want to choose the bull flex. If you have a one-to-one replacement, say after a lot of engine hours, then we still supply the Uniflex type of coupling. The CombiFlex is very easy to install. You just slide the propeller shaft in and torque the bolts up to the correct torque. And that will ensure a very tight fit, a very secure fit from propeller shaft to flexible coupling. The outer diameter, however, is slightly larger than for the bull flex. So if you decide to use the CombiFlex, make sure that you have enough room around the propeller shaft and close to the gearbox to fit the CombiFlex. In a V-drive installation in forward gear, the propeller shaft will pull on the flexible coupling instead of push. For this kind of application we have designed the K05 flexible coupling, which can absorb that forward thrust. To fit the flexible coupling to the gearbox, sometimes a flange is needed. Check the type of engine that you have, the type of gearbox that you have, and for instance for the 1GM20 engine we need flange 1 to connect it to a KM2P gearbox or the KM3P. If we're using a KM4A or KMH4A gearbox, we need flange number 3. So check the gearbox that you have, the engine that you have, and this part of the table will indicate which flange to be fitted to which gearbox and to which type of flexible coupling. The VDR constant velocity joint is a completely different way to connect gearbox to the propeller shaft. Because it has a thrust bearing, the thrust forces from the propeller are no longer transferred to the gearbox, but they are transferred directly to the ship's hull. And because of that you can use much softer engine mounts which greatly reduce vibration inside the boat. A VDR constant velocity joint can also handle much bigger alignment errors. With a normal flexible coupling it's a maximum of about 2 degrees, but with a constant velocity joint bigger angles can be handled. Please do check the manual if those angles are large enough for your installation. In most marine diesel applications, outside water, also called raw water, is used to cool the ship's engine. Because that water is pumped through a number of coolers, it needs to be as clean as possible, and with a strainer, also called raw water filter, you can filter the water before it's pumped through the engine. At Vetus we use see-through lids, so you can check if the filter is ready for work in a matter of seconds. The main dimension when ordering a strainer is the hose connection diameter. A second choice is the size of the filter, and of course a larger filter will give you a larger safety margin. The third choice is the type of filter. The one on the right, the grey filter, is used in many applications in displacement boats. But on faster boats, where you can have slamming pressures in the cooling system, the black filter is used, and we've designed it so that it can withstand a pressure of up to 8 bars. So on a high-speed boat, this will give you an additional layer of safety. The water strainer kit supplies all of the parts needed for the through hull. Not just the scoop that picks up the water outside of the hull, but also the bell valve needed for additional safety. To protect your high pressure fuel system, a water separator filter must be fitted. It not only removes as much water from the diesel fuel as possible, but also any contaminants which can cause problems in your fuel system. The filter on the left can be fitted with a manual fuel bleed pump, and the double filter on the right gives you a great safety margin. If you have problems with your fuel, think of bacteria growth or accidental amounts of water in the diesel fuel. With a double filter you can switch off one filter, use the spare filter, and you can even replace the contaminated filter while the engine is running. The main task of a waterlock is to prevent your engine, or better said your exhaust ports, against the ingress of water. When the engine is running, outside water, raw water is used to cool the exhaust system, and when you switch the engine off, none of that water should be allowed to find its way to your exhaust ports. A waterlock will provide a collecting volume where all of that water is safely stored. To select the correct waterlock for your application, the first step is to check the diameter of your exhaust elbow. Now for this engine it's 45 mm. Then we give you a range of waterlocks to choose from, and the main thing to calculate first is how large should the waterlock be. The longer the hoses are on the boat, the more water will be in the system, the larger the waterlock should be to collect that water, and we'll do the calculation in the next slide. The third step is the shape of the waterlock. Find a waterlock that easily fits your application. The one shown here is the NLP series. It's one of my favorites because you can rotate the top and the bottom and the in and outlet, which typically makes for a very efficient installation. But there's a range of different waterlocks, and if you make sure that the diameter is correct and the content is large enough, it will work in your application. The fourth choice is the material of the waterlock. For extremely demanding applications, think of lifeboats, patrol boats, rescue boats, but also racing boats. We've designed a special formulae called Navidurin, which even have Lloyd's Register approval. Now that we know the hose diameter, we can calculate how large the waterlock should be. Measure the length of all of the hoses that connect to the waterlock and that drain towards the waterlock. So here the length of hoses that you need to check is shown in blue. Any length of hose that drains overboard, such as from the gooseneck towards the waterline, is not incorporated because that water will not reach the waterlock, it will simply run overboard. Now that we know the diameter of the hose and the length of the hose, we can calculate how much water there will be in the system when we switch off the engine. So how much water will run towards the waterlock when we switch off the engine. And we will assume that there's about a 50% volume of water versus 50% of exhaust gas in the system. Now if we take a hose diameter of 102 mm, there will be 4.2 liters of water in the hose per meter of hose. So as an example, we've measured that there's 6.5 meters of hose of 102 mm in the system. That's 6.5 times 4.2 liters of water. We need a waterlock with a minimum capacity of 27.3 liters. You don't want to go overly large on the waterlock, so stay close to the 27. In most applications we strongly recommend to fit a gooseneck. A gooseneck is an elevated point in the system that will create an additional layer of safety for water entering your exhaust system. Think for instance of waves hitting the back of the boat. By creating a higher point in the system, the waves can't enter the exhaust system. So here water would be pumped in on the top, the water exhaust mixture, and the water exhaust would drain from the bottom. And any wave hitting the back of the boat would have to overcome all of that height before it can enter the engine. You can create a gooseneck from hose, but in most applications it's much easier to use a specially designed gooseneck. When the engine is running, outside water, raw water is continuously pumped through the engine into the exhaust system, and the water is pumped overboard with the use of exhaust gases. When the engine is switched off, water, due to the siphoning effect, might continuously run through your engine towards the exhaust system, and it will slowly fill up the exhaust system until it's full, and then water can enter your engine. An air vent prevents it, and this is installed in the cooling water lines. As soon as the engine is switched off, air is introduced into the system, and that will break the effect of siphoning. Typically an air vent has a mechanical valve which will open as soon as the engine is switched off, allowing air into the system. But the mechanical valve is prone to be clogged with debris, so it will be stuck open or closed. Our new version, the HSDV, uses a very reliable duckbill valve, and it is now the recommended type of air vent. To control throttle position and forward, neutral and aft gear, for mechanical controls we supply top mount and side mount options, both in plastic and stainless steel. If you have an electronically governed engine and gearbox, we strongly recommend to go with electronic controls because they give you that smooth fingertip control of your engines. We also supply options for trolling valves and trim flaps on faster boats. Because there are so many options, we recommend to check the Vetus catalog to check if there's an electronic control available for your engine. And if you want to change from mechanical to electronic controls, we even supply units for that. But have a look at our Vetus catalog to see which option best suits your application. To start a given size of engine, you need a minimum battery size. If you choose a battery which is smaller, the engine will typically start, but it causes additional stress on the battery. It won't give you the longevity that you want. We also supply battery chargers, main battery switches, fuses, battery cables and battery terminals. To run as clean and efficient as possible, a marine diesel needs ample amounts of fresh air. In this row we will give you guidance on how large the minimum size of louvre should be, but please feel free to add additional louvres so the engine can reach its full potential. If you use the information in this table to select your components, Vetus will give you a unique 5-year warranty on the quality of our products. On behalf of Vetus, I would like to thank you for your time and attention. We hope that this video, our product guide and our catalog gives you hints and ideas for many pleasurable hours out on the water.